So at what point did you realize that, gosh, I need help?
Yeah, I didn't actually. I figured I'm doing fine. I can do this all on my own. I don't need any help. It was my wife that had to pull me aside and say, "Hey, you need to either grow or do something else because I don't think this is working." And I said, "Oh, okay." Clearly, I need somebody to start handling the stuff that I'm not passionate about.
And I think the biggest thing that I saw in this and what I've seen over the years in operations is that moving forward in a business or growing means that you have to fail and you can't be perfect. So you have to let perfection go and you have to let failure enter. And if you can't do that, you won't move forward.
Excited to chat with two lovely folks today. I met them through an entrepreneurial program, which something they do really well in this program is scale trust. And in my experience, trust is so critical in building and scaling a company. So I'm excited to have a conversation with these two about how they have integrated trust into their visionary and integrator dynamic. I also know that these two have a boutique business helping people with technology, which in today's world is so important, and technology works and doesn't work. In fact, we just had that experience right before we hit record. So that can be fun. And then they have learned how to really create a dynamic duo to scale their company. And so welcome, Steve and Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about the journey that maybe you each individually went through to get into the seats that you're in. And Steve, I know you're in the visionary seat, and Elizabeth, you're in the integrator seat. So the storming and forming process of making that happen.
Sure. I think I can start.
Yeah.
So I started Zeek in 1995. So I've been at this for 28 years. And in true visionary fashion, I think I started this just with an idea. I literally had no business plan. I had no money. I had no clients. I had no prospects. I had nothing. And this was at the start of the internet. The web wasn't really even a thing yet. And so I started this business and I had to educate my prospects on what the hell I was even doing, right? I had to start most of my meetings with, let me explain what this is, right? So that you understand, where we're going. And so it's literally how I started the business. And honestly, I made the business up as I went. I had no experience with even how to write an invoice. My first client had to teach me how to write the invoice to them. I wish I was kidding. That's absolutely true. And so I, learned along the way. I think, for us, for the company, it was all about timing. I started at a good time, built a reputation, and then built this business completely off of referrals. So again, in true visionary fashion, I'm good at sales. I'm good at networking. I'm good at talking to people. I'm good at storytelling. And that's just what got us by for 25 years.
So at what point did you realize that, gosh, I need help?
Yeah, I didn't actually. I think all visionaries have a little bit of an ego, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I figured I'm doing fine. I can do this all on my own. I don't need any help. I'm just going to keep cruising along. It was my wife that had to pull me aside and say, "Hey, you need to either grow or do something else." Because I don't think this is working. We were stagnant, and we were stuck at right at about $1 million. That's what we were doing a year. My wife is an integrator. She is a COO.
Okay.
When she started teaching me what an integrator was, I had to literally go through an education process. I had no idea. I didn't know what an integrator did. I frankly didn't even know what a COO did. To me, it was a title. And so she, taught me all about this. Introduced me to the book Rocket Fuel. I read it and I said, oh, okay. Here's all the stuff I like. Here's all the stuff I don't like. And clearly I need somebody to start handling the stuff that I'm not passionate about. And so Elizabeth is actually one of my wife's best friends. And so so that's how we met. And my wife introduced me to Elizabeth about 3 years ago. And I'll let Elizabeth kind of pick it up from here.
Yeah. Well, my background, as all true integrators are operations professionals, right? Usually starts with realizing that you're really good at solving problems. Sometimes people will call you the cleaner. Sometimes people will say, listen, she can get from point A to point B, bring her in on that committee, or whatever the thing was, just to get things done. And you start to realize, wow, this is a skill I have. And I always make the joke that someday I'll write a book called A Capacity for Chaos, because I think when you're in operations, your capacity for chaos is different than most. And you can kind of make sense of the mess. And so I myself, came up in corporate America, and I realized very quickly operations was my gig, because I liked taking the hard things away from my bosses and doing it well, to where they kept handing me more and more. And that's how I grew in my career, is just by taking the really hard things from the people, in front of me and saying, hey, give that to me. I'll make that better for you. And eventually ended up owning my own business, end up selling that. And was consulting at the time that Steve called me up, and I thought he was going to look for some consulting work. To be honest, I thought he might just want some operations consulting, and we had a few really good conversations. And I said, I don't know exactly if I'm the right fit for Zeek. Right. I was really honest and transparent. And he said, Elizabeth, I don't need somebody that knows what I know. I need somebody that knows what you know. And that's how I knew that he was ready for me. And that's how I knew it was an okay, safe place to go. So
I want to double click on something from your journey, Elizabeth.
Sure.
When you said you started in operations, and I know there's more visionaries than there are integrators.
Yes.
And so if we can try to rally some more integrators, we might be able to get some more chaos organized.
Sure.
So did you start off more like in the project management, executive assistant role, and then move more into operations?
So I started off from it was a lot of organizing, a lot of planning. Started planning things for doctors, events, CEU coordination, things that are very, very tedious and hard and kind of needed to be organized. And then I got pulled and recruited into the golf world for Adidas and TaylorMade Golf. I was doing international events for them. And what you realize with golf tournaments and, US Open parties and things like that is it's all the details matter to you, and everyone else just wants to play golf, right? Everyone around you is a visionary. So you learn very quickly, okay, well, here's a budget. And so I actually think that if you're looking for really good integrators, look in like the wedding planning world, look in like the event planning world, look at the people that work 20-hour days in high heels and a blazer that are like making the whole thing happen. They know what rear projection is. They know what time, they know where the bathrooms are, they know where the bars are, and they know what time everything starts. And if you find a brain that works like that, you can train that to do this. And I think that's a really lost space where people can find talent.
Yes, and in the events world, that's like one of the most underappreciated spaces.
Yes.
See, everything you just described makes me want to vomit.
Oh, I thrive. I love it.
That's why the visionary needs an integrator. And oftentimes the integrator does not like doing the things that the visionary does either.
No. Ask Steve has been on a million podcasts, and this is my second. And I'm fine to be in the shadows, right? I'm fine to be on the background and, pulling the strings, because for me, that's the fun part, right, Steve?
And I also think it's funny, we've both we've both done some public speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's funny comparing the way we prepare for public speaking, right? I'm sure you spent, a couple hours preparing for this podcast, right? And figuring out every little detail. I've seen you prepare for speeches, right?
Yeah.
Every note card is detailed. It's all outlined. You know exactly what you're going to say when.
Yeah.
Right? I don't do that. I just get up on stage and start talking.
Yes. Well, I mean, entrepreneurs, we're really good at winging it. And your whole origin story was, I had no idea what I was doing. I jumped out of the plane and built the parachute while I was
Yeah.
flying in midair.
Yeah. I've been winging it for 30 years.
Very well, might I add, Steve.
Yes. So having your 3 years ago, you guys joined forces.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that you had out of the gate was kind of a foundational trust, because she is your wife's best friend.
Yeah. And Elizabeth and I have known each other for years.
Yes.
Before we were working together. Yes.
So when you guys were coming together, so my integrator is my sister.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we've known each other for forever. We've built several businesses together, and we have learned how to have healthy tension, see things from different perspectives. Sometimes she wants to go into the nitty gritty and my eyes glaze over and I have no idea what she's talking about. And so tell me, like, how you guys figured out, because you, Steve, you didn't know what an integrator was, and then Rocket Fuel helped. Like, how did you get into your seats and like separate out everything into the roles and then stay in your lane? Okay, there's a story here. Elizabeth is just smirking.
Yeah. Everything was perfectly smooth. And it all just worked out.
And
Yeah.
that's a nice way of saying that I told him what seat to sit in.
Yeah. I had to how do I say this? I had to be pulled away from the day-to-day processes, kicking and screaming.
Yes.
That's the easiest way to say it. And frankly, there was to be completely vulnerable and honest, there was a period where this almost didn't work out. I wasn't really on board and following the process. Elizabeth was immediately trying to put some healthy processes in place, set healthy boundaries with our clients, set good routines and processes with our employees. Really just, she came in and hit the ground running, putting processes in place for everything. And I was cranky. I think that was a nice way to put it. And I think there was a period of about 9 months, a year in, where there was a blow up on my side, not on Elizabeth's side, on my side. Where I was just feeling like things weren't working right, and Elizabeth had to basically just say to me, "Listen, I need you to trust the process.
Yeah.
Right. This is going to work. You're going to have to really trust me and understand that I know what I'm doing." And at that point I had to just take a step back and really let go. And so it took a good, 9 months, a year for me to finally actually let go of the reins.
Yeah. That is not an uncommon journey. It's a very, very, very common journey. And even me and my sister, having the level of trust we have, I feel like sometimes visionaries are labeled control freaks, and we're not entirely control freaks, but it is our brainchild, and we want to make sure things are happening a certain way. And oftentimes the process that we're trying to trust doesn't have a lot of visibility. So we're trying to let go, but then we aren't seeing any fruit of this letting go process for a 9-month birthing process. And so we are starting to have panic attacks and anxiety and like, is this really working? Did I make the right decision? There's a lot of money going out, but is it really creating the operational efficiencies? So Elizabeth, how did you manage his nervous system to get him to calm down, to trust the process?
You know what? It's funny. Aside from maybe eating too many cookies, I think that, pulling that aside, I think really where it came down is that it was taking little bits and pieces and trying to help him celebrate those wins. So in the moments he was panicking, right, or anxiety was setting in, it's say, hey, let's stop and let's celebrate something that we just won, right? A client a partner that we just won, or a system that we just put into place, or maybe while he's panicking over here, we have employees over here celebrating a win, right? And bridging that message to say, hey, let's lean into the positive here, because we have 10 things to celebrate. And that one thing that we're focusing on is taking away from the thing that we're moving forward. And I think the biggest thing that I saw in this and what I've seen over the years in operations is that moving forward in a business or growing means that you have to fail and you can't be perfect. So you have to let perfection go and you have to let failure enter. And if you can't do that, you won't move forward. And so that's operations. But I will say, to validate both of you, that I understand as an integrator and former business owner myself, that the person that takes the payroll to bed at night is the owner. The person that takes away, the lines of credit and the things that you're doing to build that new business, that's all going to bed on the heart of the owner. And an integrator needs to be empathetic. And if you don't have an empathetic integrator, that won't work either, because they have to put themselves in the shoes of the owner that's letting all of this go. And that's why you need the right partnership and trust to be built. And once it's there, and Steve could go, wow, look what we did, and we can all celebrate it, then he can start to let more and more go. And that's ultimately what happened.
I think one of the hardest parts was making the decision to part ways with some of our clients.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was the toughest part, because there were clients that were just not the right fit for us, either for several reasons: the way they were treating us, the way our client, our employees felt about those projects, and then ultimately, whether they were turning a profit or not. But once Elizabeth was able to kind of put that on paper and where I could see the data, it made sense. But every client we had to shed or make a decision about hurt, because all I was thinking about was the top line, right? Not the bottom line, and not the intangibles that the rest of the team was feeling about these particular clients. And so I think that was, for me, was the hardest part.
I have gone through that exact same journey, and it is hard because we work so hard to acquire those clients, and we care about them as people, not just as a project on our P&L. And that feels like a personal affront, to feel like we have to set up a boundary and say no, but we're actually saying yes to so many other beautiful things that just we didn't have a space on our plate for yet.
Well, and ultimately, by making those changes, the results are what I would call an opening up of headspace.
Yeah,
right? That's what it's done for our team, right? Obviously, it's opened up a lot more, opportunity costs, but really, it's just it's a change in headspace. It's a change in energy, and without even focusing on it, I know Elizabeth focuses on it, but we've, in just the 3 years that we've been working together, we've nearly 3x'd our revenue.
Yes.
Just by making these changes.
Yeah. One thing, so I'm actually in the middle of another series in conjunction with this, but Elizabeth, you touched on it, so I kind of want to bring it in.
Sure.
It's empathy.
Yes.
And the other series I'm doing is about how do we balance our alpha and our empathy to build and scale businesses. But I believe empathy is so critical, and alpha is very critical, because alpha gets shit done and empathy makes it fun. So how do you guys balance that, and who's more alpha or who's more empathy, and what does that look like?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this empathy word.
He's got the alpha down.
No, I think Steve, he's selling himself short. I personally think that both live in all of us, right?
Yes,
I think there are moments where there's moments I've had to step into the alpha with Steve and say, Steve, no, right? But then he's been able to step in and go, hey, everybody, no, right? And so in between is where the empathy kind of seeps in the cracks. But for me, I think the values of your business, right, should be empathetic, and you should use those as your guide. So for us, we have, values that drive us every day. And when you go to question, should I be alpha or empathetic, your values will tell you how to answer. And so if you have set up empathetic values, like for us, right, it's mutual respect, have fun, right, all these things that matter to us as a business, then when we come to make a hard decision, we don't have to force the alpha in, right? We can just make the decision based on our values.
Yeah.
And frankly, before Elizabeth came in and put in processes and standards and all these great practices that we have now, without knowing it, I wasn't being empathetic to our team, right? I mean, our team was really just not being treated well,
think they were
right?
burning
Not
out.
because I meant to, right?
Right.
I said all the right things, right?
Right.
And I cared about my people, but because of the the choices I was making with our clients and um, choices around who we stay with, who we
Yes.
keep, and who we shed and not shed, right? Um, the employees were not feeling a sense of respect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have personally gone through that, and I have watched a ton of entrepreneurs go through it. And I think it is right when you get, because essentially, Steve, what you're doing is you're sitting in the visionary and integrator seat at the same time.
Yes.
And it's nearly impossible to do because the visionary seat is externally focused. They're like 10 moves ahead. How are we
Yeah.
going to do this? Brand, outreach, whereas the integrator is internally focused. So when one person is trying to sit in both of those seats, we're fragmenting ourselves. And when
Yeah.
we fragment ourselves, we literally kind of shut down a little bit emotionally. At least that's what happened with me, because I just had to be able to psychologically keep it all together. And so I went through the motions, but my heart couldn't be fully invested in either one because it was too much mental space, emotional space to hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Now that we're on the other side of this, I can see it clear as day, right?
Right.
But before Elizabeth came along, I didn't think there was anything wrong, right? It was all just running a business, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Now
Yeah.
I can put my finger on every little thing that that a visionary is supposed to be doing and an integrator is supposed to be doing.
So tell me, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that right when Steve got a hold of me, I think boundaries and burnout were very prevalent, not only for his team, but for him. So what was happening was, yes, was he getting everything done? Sure. Was it taking his weekends and was it all night till 2 a.m? And what you realized was there was no more capacity in his, in his brain space to even be a visionary anymore because the integrator elements of everything had really overconsumed him. So he would actually robbed himself of being a visionary by just not having the help. Right. And I think a lot of visionaries fall into that. So, and to touch on the point on the customers or the partners, right? Not all business is good business, right? And they can cannibalize the energy of your team and of you. And you end up putting out fires and end up, paying 2 and 3 more times out of your pocket to deal with these partners than you ever made in profit. And so I just want to say, I think that is really what I walked into anyway, at least from my perspective.
Well, and what I've realized is when you're trying to do both the visionary and integrator role, you do neither very well.
No,
True.
it's so hard, especially at that 7-figure mark. It's really hard. So when you guys joined, you guys mentioned the team. So the team is experiencing burnout, collapsed boundaries. Steve is experiencing that. There's an element of really desiring structure, knowing what the accountability looks like, what success looks like, because A, players like to show up, do a good job, confident that they executed well. How did the attachment go? Because I have found sometimes teams, they're like attached to the visionary and then they got to wean off, or maybe the team was like, yes, I'm so excited. The savior is here.
I'll let Steve go.
Actually, I was going to let you go.
You're going to let me go?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I will say I sat down and interviewed every single person on the team when I started. And every integrator needs a right hand. Okay. In order for an integrator to get everything done in a business that was going through all of this turmoil, immediately I knew who I wanted. I reached out to her. And we were able to bring her in. And that's when we were able to get moving, because what we were able to do is put our heads together. She's an integrator as well. So it's like integrator times 2, right? And we were able to kind of dice it up. But I think the team was wary. I'm not going to lie. I think they're like, well, who's this chick? Like, what's she doing? She's not from software. Like, what was she, you know what I mean? And looking at my history and saying, okay, well, she was like in construction, like what's going on here? And I think that I had to prove myself in one way or another to every single person on the team over time. And the hardest heart to win, I feel I won. I was validated and won last year when he said to me on our retreat, why I know that you're meant to be here and why I trust you now is because everything you said you were going to do, you did. And
Mm,
your follow through gained my respect. So
yeah.
it's not easy. It takes a long time. It's an uphill battle, but if I'm up for a challenge. So I love a challenge. So that's what I would say regarding the team. And I'll let Steve maybe follow up to that.
No, I think you nailed it. We've got a special challenge in our company because we're dealing with engineers. Engineers hate change.
Hate it.
Period. And so I knew it was going to be an uphill battle bringing in a new decision maker because they were just used to me, and frankly, they were used to manipulating me.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
They didn't want a lot of structure. Engineers don't like
Yeah.
they don't like a lot of structure. They don't like a lot of change. So I think there was that unique challenge with Elizabeth coming in. It did take a while, but yeah, it has absolutely been validated.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Elizabeth, you're amazing. And Steve, you're so lucky to have
I know it.
gotten her. But what she did was she came in and she built trust. And building trust takes time. And this is a mistake that I have made many, many times where we just try to engineer trust too quickly.
Yeah.
And then it actually implodes because there's not really the action you said you were going to do, the follow through on the action, the circling back to make sure that person, the action felt good to the person. Like that all takes time for cycles of tasks to unfold. And so you coming in and doing that on both sides, because the challenge of an integrator is you have to do it to the visionary, but you also have to do it to the team.
Yeah, you're managing two things. You're managing the visionary's panic, and you're managing the team's panic, right?
Yeah.
So you are basically a pain sponge, to use a Succession term, right? You're basically you're inserted to absorb everyone's pain and recycle that out into something positive. And it's something I'm uniquely qualified to do, apparently. Like Liam Neeson, I have a special set of skills, right? And so I can't use them everywhere. Here is where I was a perfect fit, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I like to think of the integrator role as managing nervous systems, because you're managing the nervous system of the team to make sure that they feel fully integrated, heard, respected, clarified, that they can be productive. In the same with the visionary. And mothers tend to be really good at the integrator seat because they're used to doing that in their homes.
Yeah. Very similar, day to day sometimes, right? You feel like you're managing children. Not all the time, but there are moments.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that about our team.
I will say, though, I think that there's a part of this that is really important, and that there's a vulnerability that an integrator needs to have to enter a team and a business that's been established for 25 years. You have to come in no ego checked at the door. You're not going to know everything because they know everything about what they know the best. I know what I know the best, and I'm not going to be able to come in and tell them how to know what they know best. So for me, you have to check your ego at the door. And even if you're cringing at everything that you're seeing, and you have to consume these individuals as people, and then you have to go back and you have to go to them and say, listen, I'm in a tough spot. This is what historically has worked for me. Is the chaos better than the change? And eventually they all would say, no, you know what? I'll take the change over the chaos because there's a shelf life on that. And the vulnerability that you have to have real hard conversations with a lot of intelligent people, it gets you there, right? But you can't come in guns blazing. You will never win, Staci. If you come in with both guns in the air, they will shove you out and shut you out so quickly. It's very hard.
So I'm curious, going back to what Steve said about engineers being able to manipulate him.
Yes.
And Steve, I'm with you here. I had somebody tell me I coddled the team and all this stuff. So I get it. How did you get engineers to make that shift?
Yeah. How did you do it, Steve?
Oh, was the question for me?
I think Elizabeth, you had to get them.
No.
How did they not manipulate you, Elizabeth?
Let me tee this up a little bit, because I think Elizabeth and I have a running joke, right?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Go ahead.
When Elizabeth first came on board, almost all of my engineers called me privately and started the conversation with the word "bro."
Yeah.
Dude, like, what is this? What have you done? What, I don't understand. Like, things were fine.
Mhm.
Like, what are you doing? Right. All right. And then
Bruh. Yeah.
yeah, let me take it from here.
I think what was happening is that it was Steve that had to do it though, Stacy, because they had to see Steve trusting me in order
Yeah.
to trust me. So really it really wasn't in my hands, to be honest, because if the visionary doesn't let go and say she knows best on this item, then they are going to just keep circling back to the easy dad, right? And we make the mom and dad joke a little bit sometimes, in context, but it's true. You have to be a united front when you're telling your kid no more video games or no whatever. And then they can't go, if they go to dad and he says, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. Do what you want. And I'm over here trying to integrate something, then I'm just going to be, cut off at the knees. So it really does start with Steve. I think my part really does start with him trusting me.
And I will tell you, because I knew I needed to do this, right? I knew I had a clear vision for why I brought Elizabeth in, for where I wanted the company to go. I was bought in immediately, right? Even though I bucked the system, right? even though I was cranky and I threw tantrums every now and then, those all stayed private, right?
Yeah,
Any tantrum I threw was me and Elizabeth on
those
the
were
phone,
private.
and that was it. That was all private. Publicly to all the employees, it was always a united front.
Yes.
And so, my employees and my team, even though they came to me initially with some doubt, it was always a clear vision that I was communicating. Hey, this is why I'm doing this, right? We've spent 25 years doing the same thing. Here's been some of the chaos that we've experienced. I was able to put it into words, and I just said, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So let's try something new. And that's really what I said to, my team that's been with us for a long time, is I said, hey, just try this with me. Yeah. Right. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
And then eventually, Steve, you took the calls, and then eventually you stopped taking the calls. And that's the key, Stacy. He listened to them early. Yes. Tell me your thoughts. And then would cycle it back to me. And then pretty soon he learned, I would say over the first year, he'd get a call and he'd be like, what did Elizabeth say? Right? Wait, what? Did you talk to Elizabeth? Right. And then cycle it back so that he would shut it down before. Yes. And it's that way too, I think, with operations, with partner engagements. It was always Steve at the front. We're like, no, we need to get the team in front of the partners so they can see us as a team, not just as Steve. And so that was hard for Steve too. Wouldn't you say, Steve? Because you had to say, okay, well, have you talked to Audrey? Have you talked to people on the team first?
Yeah, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, it's absolutely true.
Oh, the transitions. But I love how much you guys were just transparent with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important.
There were lots of late night phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a similar story of my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and then my father was trapped in his business. I came as integrator first and organized and scale his business. And then I went on to start other businesses, which I'm now the visionary of. And learning, I score high on both. So this is also a way that I got trapped, was because I can be an integrator, I can be a visionary, but I prefer the visionary. And making that shift was into the visionary seat, hands down, exactly Steve experience. And then purely integrator to a different visionary, completely Elizabeth's experience. Yes. And so when I have had to personally do it, I can see the demons of the visionaries that I've supported, because I have those demons now.
Yeah.
And then I can also realize kind of the culture impact of me on the team as from a visionary perspective, which has been so eye-opening and fascinating. Now, to pivot this just a little bit, one of the things I have found helpful, and I'm curious how you guys did this in the beginning, was getting a dashboard or a scorecard together so that I could have visibility and be able to trust the process. So what did that look like?
You go. It's so funny that you asked that question.
No, so, I think you should go, Steve, because I think you're excited to tell it. Go ahead.
The dashboard and data and all of these analytics we've struggled with in the past. We've been through every project management system. Ultimately, we landed on teamwork, which was where we've been for about the past 5 years or so, maybe
Mhm.
maybe 7 years. We've been working with teamwork, but even teamwork doesn't give us complete visibility into how to resource,
Right.
what everybody's working on at any given time. Um, we still have other tools that we're integrating, and so we've attempted to build a dashboard several times over the years. But it's funny that you asked this because we're actually right in the middle of, I think, finally
Yes.
building and launching our own dashboard, which
Yes.
will probably ultimately become our project management system. We're
Yes.
really excited about it. We're really proud of it. Now,
Very
it's
proud.
for us, so there's no public visibility for
Yeah.
it, but it's pretty damn cool.
Mhm.
So anyway, go ahead,
I
Elizabeth.
I do think what we do in private shows in public.
I
Just like
agree.
how we eat shows in public. I think the same is true in business.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree completely. And what I would say is we started out with small wins and small metrics, right? So obviously, when I very first started, I was like, "Hey, where's the business plan? No business plan. Where's the budget? No budget. Where are your projections? What goals are you setting for the year? None of those." So like we started really, they're all
They're right
right
up
there.
here, right
Um,
in the visionary's head.
But if you don't say it out loud and set those intentions, even for a stretch goal, right? How do you grow? So we started really simple with a business plan. We started, putting together a budget, a month to month revenue, rollover, and boom, quick light, we grew. Right. It's because we had visibility of everything month to month. And those little tiny reports that we were able to build by hand, right, because we had to, will eventually become part of the dashboard that we have essentially launched internally this year. And we'll be able to work in QuickBooks and we'll be able to look at receivables. And so we'll be able to take this all to a next level. But it had to start somewhere, and it started very small. A lot of, personal Excel sheets, a lot of shared, receivables reports, a lot of, things like that. But what I was so proud to hand over the first business plan, the, overview when I started, because I knew the business. I felt like Zeek was like the prom queen, like the hot chick that was just wearing glasses and a ponytail. Like all we needed to do was like, it was like that movie, right? So I just feel like all we need to do is just like make a few adjustments. All the good stuff was there. So we just needed to track and use the data and the metrics to at least start somewhere.
Yeah. And I do feel like from the visionary seat, getting that dashboard is so helpful, but also trusting the data that's on the dashboard.
Yes.
Because that was like a journey as well
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so the dashboard itself, because it's was a large software project for us. The reason we kept starting and stopping is because we all had ideas of what was going to go into this thing, right? And I think Elizabeth nailed it. Once we actually kind of broke it down into small wins, then we can build it. Internal projects like that have always been a struggle because I've got some grand ideas of what I want to build, right? I just don't have the resources for it,
Yeah.
at least according to Elizabeth.
That's true. I mean, shame, right?
I mean, if it was up to me, I would just take all the resources from our client.
Oh, we would totally. And we're like, well, where's the revenue going to come from?
Revenue, it'll follow.
Oh my gosh, I can so relate to that. Because it's either, sometimes it's like, I want all the resources for home base. And then it's like, no, give all the resources to the client. It's like, no, we need a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So a couple of last questions. How do you guys define success?
For me, I think it's very simple. Happiness of team, right? Because if Steve's happy, we're all happy. If I'm happy, we're all happy. I'm happy if the team's happy, and happy team equals happy partners, right? And happy partners pay their bills, right? So for me, it's really, really simple. It boils down to day to day, are we happy? And the answer is yes. Were we 3 years ago? Probably not.
No. Yeah, I think I'd give the exact same answer. For me, it's a bit of a feeling, right? So it's about energy and how people are showing up to Zoom calls, whether internally or externally. How people are, how the demeanor of the team is, and just the air is a lot lighter.
It's lighter
now than it was before Elizabeth came on board. So.
I love this. Elizabeth, you're just amazing that, and Steve, your wife must be amazing that she has a friend like
She
Elizabeth.
absolutely, they both are absolutely amazing. Coincidentally, they're actually both born on the exact same day on the exact same year.
Oh
They have
my
the
That's
God.
true.
exact same birthday.
That's true. We're both Leos. Big surprise, right, Stacy?
Well,
But yeah, both same day and year.
I have to acknowledge you too, Steve, though, because
Hmm.
going through the transition to really own the visionary role when it is your baby for 28 years
Hmm.
is takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of trusting the process. It takes a lot
Hmm.
of, I'm not going to say blind faith, but faith before
Hmm.
there's actually results, which
Yeah.
does induce a lot of anxiety for us visionaries. And you pushed through. And
Hmm.
for anyone out there who's listening to this who's stuck in that seat where they're afraid to push through,
Hmm.
you can 3x your revenue in just
Yeah.
a short amount of time by pushing through the barrier. And there's always going to be brick ceilings in business that we
Hmm.
have to learn to shatter. And
Yeah.
it's easier to shatter it with a right hand person. And that's really that visionary integrator dynamic. So I just have to acknowledge both of you for that.
Very
Thank
true.
you. Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree with everything you said.
If folks want to get connected with you, learn more about what y'all do, where would they find you?
So our company's called Zeek. It's zeek.com. Pretty simply, I'm Steve at Zeek.com and Elizabeth is Elizabeth at Zeek.com. I'm happy to answer questions or, if anybody wants to follow up with us.
And you primarily focus on SaaS founders, right?
So we build SaaS products as a service, so as a work
Hmm.
for hire.
Mhm.
In addition to that, we also do some e-commerce, some website
Yeah.
building. We also build mobile apps for both iOS and Android. We are a software agency. That's specifically what we do.
Hmm.
So we don't do branding, marketing, design. That is our lane. We write really good code.
Hmm.
We need that in today's world. So I love that.
True.
Well, it was a pleasure having both of you on, and I wish you the best visionary integrator results this year. And I have no doubt you're going to crush it because you both are awesome.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Stacy.
Thanks for having us.
I love deep conversations. I don't know about you, but something about going deep with soulful, reflective individuals who are leading businesses and organizations is so impactful and powerful. I would love to know which part of this episode resonated with you. Take a clip, tag me in it on social media, and get out there and do some things because we can't win if we don't execute. So trying and executing and learning through all the messiness is where all the growth and grit comes from. I'm excited to see how this inspired you, and if it did resonate, tag me and share it with somebody who would benefit as well. I'm rooting for you. Cheers, friend.